Recording is on.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Jennifer.
I don't know why that said your name. I'm back in the agent area because my computer power source fried yesterday afternoon and I had to order one. It's supposed to be here today, so I'm on the agent computer.
Hey, Susan, I had a quick question for you. On the purchase and sale agreement, when you said the instrument number and it's not the tax ID, where would you find that?
So I can show you real quick if you'll give me just a second to actually find it. It is on Courthouse Retrieval, and it is, if you look at the deed book and page number, then you can, right under the deed book and page number, there'll be a long number. And in our area, what I've noticed, it's like the year, like 2019 is the beginning of that number. So it, let's see here. Let me see if I can share the screen, which I'm going to have to do anyway. So let's just go ahead and do that. All right, so can you see that now?
And
Okay, so when I pulled this straight out of the Courthouse Retrieval CRS off the MLS tax records where you search those.
yes, ma'am.
So that's the deed book and page number, and if it has this big long number underneath it, then it has a document number or instrument number, and not all of them do.
Okay.
So yeah, it could be that you don't see it because it's not there.
That'd be a good reason.
Yep, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that.
So we can just leave it blank then if there's not one.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Absolutely. Well, somehow I lost you guys. I don't see you guys, so I don't know. I usually see you when I screen share, but I'm not seeing you. So I don't know where you went. So again, I am still trying to, oh, I see myself down in the corner now. I click on Blue Jeans, but if I click back over on sharing the form, you're gone. So if you're like raising your hand or flopping around and wanting to ask a question, I can't see you, so just unmute yourself and ask a question. It'll be perfectly fine. I don't mind that at all. Just say, hey, Susan. Okay, so we're here this morning. Welcome, and I always say this, thank God it's Friday, which means absolutely nothing to a real estate agent, right? Because we're working all weekend. But it somehow makes us feel good to say it's Friday. I don't know why. Everybody loves the weekend. I did tell my husband Friday nights are we go get Gabriel's Pizza. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Gabriel's in Cleveland, but they have delicious pizza, just so you know. So let's talk about the VA FHA loan addendum. So of course this form is only used for VA and FHA loans. Now if you pull up the purchase and sale agreement and you go over to the section that we're on page 2, I believe it is, where you need to check a loan type here, then you will see that it says attach addendum. So it's talking about this thing, okay? I know sometimes people don't attach it when they send the offer over. They want to just kind of wait and negotiate the price because they have to fill out a number right here on line 13. And that's really not the way it's supposed to happen because of what is called the non-allowables. So it's not so much a problem for FHA anymore as it used to be. Both the VA and FHA loan programs are government backed in some shape, form, or fashion, okay? Insured or guaranteed, whatever it might be, depending on the loan type, okay? So the loan programs themselves, under federal law, have certain fees and expenses that a buyer cannot pay, okay? And that was created that way, many years ago to help people who want to use the VA and or FHA loans, not to have to come up with so much money and actually putting it on the seller's back, basically. Now, FHA, you hardly have any fees anymore. I mean, I guess I could safely say with any lender you use, if you have more than $125 of fees, and that's a really high number right now, then I would ask why, okay? But a lot of people don't even know how to ask. They'll say, how much are their closing costs for VA and how much are they for FHA? Well, closing costs and these fees that are called non-allowables are two completely different things, okay? So right question to ask is, how much are the non-allowables for an FHA loan or a VA loan? And the truth of the matter is, if you've got two or three lenders that you seem to use all the time, if you get the numbers from them, everybody else should be fairly in line with that, okay? So you can come up with a happy medium there. And what you see in front of you is my teaching form, which these are uploaded in the SEM tools on the company cloud. Everybody needs to check that out. But we've uploaded these annotated forms so you can have them. So this is where I am talking about and what I'm talking about, where it says a VA FHA buyer will have fees from their lender that are called non-allowables, and you need to ask how much those non-allowable fees are. Okay, so normally an FHA, truthfully, right now FHA is running almost nothing. I mean, I really haven't had a lender charge an FHA non-allowable in a long time. Okay, but now VA, we know for sure one of those non-allowables is the wood destroying insect infestation report that we all lovingly call the termite letter. That cannot be paid by the buyer. So that is one example of a non-allowable that we deal with. Okay. There are other non-allowables when it comes to a VA loan. VA will have the most non-allowables, and that's why some sellers don't like VA, because they definitely have to pay X number of dollars. But if you use this form and you're already going to ask the seller to pay any costs right now, and kind of hard right now to get a seller to pay any costs, maybe, it depends. And as real estate licensees, when we list a house, we need to go over this with the sellers so they understand how this works. Because if they, don't want to accept VA buyers or VA loans or FHA loans, honest to goodness, if they didn't accept FHA loans, they would miss a lot of buyers these days. And it's really put a hurting on the VA buyers. And, we're veterans. My family, we're veterans, and we hugely support veterans. And I've probably got 3 VA buyers right now that I can't get them in anything because the seller won't take a VA buyer because they're afraid of the VA loan program. And they really shouldn't be afraid. Truthfully, the VA and the FHA appraisals are extremely close. So, it's really, they used to say, oh, it's a VA appraisal. We don't want to do that. But it's not like that anymore. It's not. I mean, even with FHA, we used to have what's called the VC sheets. I don't know if anybody on this call was in business many years ago, but they were VC sheets, and that used to scare sellers to death. But the truth is, we had them, and we could show them to them when we listed a property, and we would say, okay, you need to make sure all this stuff is the way it needs to be, because this is what is going to happen. They don't do that anymore either, which is a shame, because you just have to wait to see what the appraisal comes out with, which I've dealt with that actually this week. I learned something this week that I've never had come up on. This came up on a conventional loan this week. Had a house. The only heat source it had was propane, and there was a propane heater in every room. and there is a propane tank at the house, and the appraiser said, yeah, that won't work. You've got to install a permanent heat. And this was a conventional loan. So we're supposed to close on Monday, and we absolutely scrambled to death, the buyer's agent and us, to find, number one, we had to find those baseboard heaters and get them installed and take pictures of them and send them to the appraiser so we could go ahead and close on Monday. So every loan program has something different, and this is just VA FHA loans, okay? VA buyers also cannot pay any brokerage fees or commissions, so you need to remember that if you are doing a buyer's representation agreement. And we never want to leave the commission blank on a buyer's representation agreement. And we never, according to NAR now, should be telling buyers or sellers that our service is free. Even though we know with buyers what we're going to get paid, it's coming through the transaction itself and is in the MLS. But we can't tell them our services are free to them. We have to put something in the blank. But let's say we don't have that. I mean, there's things in MLS right now that the commission is $1. And if the commission is $1 and you can't negotiate that commission with that seller, then your buyer can't pay you if they're getting a VA loan. FHA they can, but not a VA loan. Okay. VA buyers also have a fee called a funding fee, which is section 4 of this document, that has to either be paid up front, or the VA loan program will allow them to roll that amount into the loan and finance it. FHA buyers don't have a funding fee. So if you've got an FHA buyer, you would never fill out section 4 on this form. Also, you need to have in the back of your mind, if you're working with a veteran, if they're classified as having a 10% or more disability, the fee is waived. And there's also some programs where the spouses of veterans, if they've not remarried, can utilize the VA loan program. And if that spouse died from any injury or disability that they had as a veteran, then the fee is waived. And that gets a little hairy, the lender really needs to be handling that when we go in. But a lot of spouses don't realize they can still take advantage of the VA benefits that are out there if they have not remarried. So that's just some things to think about a VA FHA loan. So when we look at the addendum itself, of course, it is an addendum, which means it's going to be listed in section 18 of the purchase and sale agreement. I showed you already on the purchase and sale agreement where it says attach addendum, and it's showing you all my notes here on PDF. That's funny. And let me get down here to section 18. This is where you would also need to list the VA FHA addendum, okay? Again, we've talked about this before in our Forms Friday, but you don't ever list any forms on lines 481 through 482 unless they have the word exhibit or addendum in their title. So that means no comp agreements, no property disclosures, exemptions, nothing. No buyer's rep, none of that stuff. No confirmation of agency, disclaimer, wire fraud. I'm just thinking of things I've seen people put in there, but those aren't supposed to be put in there, only if it has the word addendum or exhibit in its title. So again, goes over with the offer, property address, buyer and seller. That's pretty self-explanatory. It has then language on lines 4 through 8 that says, this is part of the purchase and sale agreement as of the binding agreement date. It's just the addendum. And then we get into section 1. Whoops, get this down there, which is the appraised value. Okay, so of course a house has to appraise, all right? And you need to put a number in here. And when I write up an offer, just put on line 13 how much the buyers are offering, whatever it is. It does say the buyer can have the privilege and option of proceeding with the contract without regard to the amount of the appraised valuation. Okay, but what happens is the FHA program and the VA program will only guarantee a certain amount. Okay, so we know that there are sometimes we are having to use what's called an appraisal gap. So buyers will offer a price, negotiate a price, and if the appraisal comes in low, the buyer pays the difference. Now, I'm going to be honest, not many FHA or VA buyers I've ever worked with have been able to deal with an appraisal gap. Okay, they don't have the extra money. That's why they're using those loan programs, because they're easier to use. So I have never dealt with a VA or FHA buyer that has an appraisal gap. Could they do it? Absolutely, they could. But I just put in the number here on line 13 of what the buyer is offering. And I always get the question, well, what if the price is negotiated and then the price changes? A lot of people don't understand that this is, as I said up here in lines 4 through 8, this is an addendum that is part of the purchase and sale agreement. So if you're going to counter offer, let's say the purchase price, and whatever else you might counteroffer on the counteroffer form, this is part of the offer, so you can come and counteroffer line 13 of the FHA VA addendum and change that number on a counteroffer. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that anything that is an addendum or an exhibit to the offer, if it's being counteroffered and something needs to change on addendums or exhibits, change them on the counteroffer form. Now, I know what a lot of people do. They wait till they negotiate everything, then they fill out a new form. Now, I don't have a problem with that. It's as long as everybody's in agreement to do it and will sign it, because you got to have it as part of the transaction process when you turn your files in. And the purchase and sale agreement says attach addendum. So, you really need to be doing that, and everything needs to be signed at the same time that things are signed. Okay, any questions
Susan,
on that appraisal value?
yeah, Susan, actually, I do have a question on that. I ran into a situation a couple of years ago where it was an FHA approval or appraisal, and they came out and appraised it. Or I had the listing, but it had been appraised the year before. And FHA at that time, I don't know if it's still that way, the appraiser was good for 2 years at that time.
Ah,
So I had a house that I couldn't sell because it was clearly worth more, but the FHA appraisal had already said it was less than that. Do you know any insight on that?
I do know, and I thank you for bringing that up. When it's an FHA loan, okay, if it's an FHA loan, the appraisal, no matter what it is, if it comes in low, it stays with that property for a minimum of 120 days and or more. And that's going to
I
depend
thought
on
it
the
was 2
lender.
years at that time.
It might have been years ago, but now it's 120 days, and some lender might stay longer, depending upon their program. So that's why you've got to talk with the seller when you are listing the house and explain these things to him. So, for instance, if I'm talking to a seller in Bradley County, because that is a high FHA loan. Well, everybody's kind of getting conventionals now because of the problems that are out there, but a lot of FHA buyers, there's still a lot. And I have to tell my sellers when I'm listing property, and on your listing agreement, it talks about what types of loans they'll accept, and you have to write it on there. So I go over all this with them there. I don't just assume they're going to accept every loan. And as real estate agents, we should always check the types of loans in the MLS that the sellers are willing to accept. So we've got to have this discussion. And I tell them, if you're going to accept FHA and VA buyers, we have that whole discussion, funding fee, non-allowables, the whole 9 yards. And it will, and with an FHA, if the house doesn't appraise, they can't sell it to another FHA buyer at least for 120 days. That's the minimum. And it could be longer. And in Bradley County, that could actually cut their buying pool down by 70% of buyers, because that's about the percentage. Last time I looked, I'm gonna be honest, I hadn't did a lot of tracking of market stuff in Bradley County lately. I should, but it used to be, it would cut their pool of buyers down tremendously. But what you also need to understand, Mr. Seller, is that you don't want to say no to an FHA or VA loan, because what if, well, I said that wrong. you really want to consider offering FHA and VA loan, because we have to have, we have to abide by the fair housing rules. Okay. Now, FHA buyers and VA buyers is not a protected class. But if they're in a protected class and you don't offer that financing, then that's where the problem could come up. Okay. But it's your choice, Mr. Seller. If you don't want to do it, we're not going to do it. And I don't put it in the MLS. I don't just go in there and willy-nilly mark, every type of financing. I have to talk to the sellers about every one of these financing programs. I mean, the whole THDA, rural development, every one, so that they understand what they're offering. Because for me, as a real estate licensee, if I've got every box in there checked and you bring me an offer for some loan type and I go, well, the seller isn't going to take that loan type, then why do you have it checked in the MLS? Because a lot of agents will do that. They don't discuss it with the seller. They just come in there and check every type. And if I'm showing and looking for houses for a buyer that has FHA or VA, that's the way they're going, or USDA or whatever, I need to check when I'm looking for houses for them. I mean, I've got a buyer right now that's going FHA, and the truth of the matter is he wants to be in a certain area in Chattanooga, and there's not a single house that's offering FHA financing in that area of Chattanooga. Everyone he sends me, because he's looking out, well, he was out on Zillow or Realtor.com, and I've now got him into my website looking, but, we have to watch that very closely. Because it's a problem. It's absolutely a problem. I can't tell you how many times I've pulled up outside of a house and I could tell just from pulling up on the outside of the house that there's no way in the world this house will ever be able to go FHA or VA. And I mean, if it needs a lot of repairs, a lot of people, FHA does have a program, the FHA 203K loan. I'm going to tell you, I'm not even seeing that used in more than 5 years. Not that it's not out there, it's just nobody's doing it because the market is the way it is. And that is a rehab loan where people can come in and make the repairs. The VA doesn't have a loan like that I'm aware of. It does have to be livable as far as the VA loans go. And with FHA too, I mean, there's certain things that have to be in place. And, peeling paint. There can't be peeling paint. I mean, I will never forget. This is the example I use all the time. I pulled up outside of a house down in Chickamauga, Georgia, with my little single mom getting an FHA loan. And I told her, I said, I'm so sorry, but this house is not going to go FHA. The entire exterior of the house was all bubbled up and, flaking paint. And it would never go, but the agent had put it in the MLS that it would go FHA, and I called the agent from sitting in the car there with the buyer in the car with me, and I said, I pulled up out here, and this house has a whole lot of flaking paint. I mean, virtually the whole house. And she said, oh yeah, she said, that's not a problem. I said, well, it is a problem if you have an FHA buyer, because FHA will never pass this. The whole house will have to be scraped and painted. And, if it's lead-based paint, then we got to deal with doing it environmentally correct. And she said, what are you talking about? She had no idea what I was talking about. And I said, well, can I call you back? Because I didn't want to get into everything with her on the phone with my buyer in the car. And when I called her back, she said, no one has ever trained me on this. I had no idea. I said, you have got to talk to your sellers before you put this in the MLS. The seller will accept an FHA loan, especially if the property won't pass an FHA appraisal. And we're not appraisers, right? And we don't get a whole lot of information from appraisers these days. Every time you ask them a question, their answer is, well, it depends. Okay, so it's really hard to know. So that comes from taking training classes and talking to people who've been in the business a long time and letting them help you with that. I mean, like I said, I had no idea on a conventional loan that propane heat and heaters would not be considered a permanent source of heat. Truthfully, I didn't even know they were looking at that because I hadn't had that come up. I've never had that come up on a conventional loan. And I was blown away.
You've got some questions in the chat as well.
Oh gosh, and where do I see that? Let me go see where I find that at. I mean, I know where to get it. It's just right now while I'm, okay. Does it mean that if you were married to a veteran and received benefits, you can utilize this type of loan as well? Now, I just said It depends, okay? It's what appraisers are telling us. And Juliet, it does depend. So what the spouse, as long as she's not remarried, okay, the spouse needs to take the husband's DD 214. If you've ever been in the military or the spouse of somebody in the military, you will know what a DD 214 is. And you'll have to take that to the VA office to see if you qualify for eligibility to use the VA loan. That's how, even if you're a veteran or the wife of a veteran or whatever, that's where you start at. Okay, you've got to start with having a DD 214 in hand and going to the VA office. However, there are some large lenders, and maybe all of them now, I don't know, I haven't really asked the question lately, but they do some what they call desktop certifications. Okay, so if you've got your certificate of eligibility already, then they can just do it via desktop or even just the DD 214. This is where you got to talk to the lenders that you use. So the next question that is asked, it says, what about the Tidewater gap? So let me talk about the Tidewater gap when we're talking about appraisals here. So when we're talking about appraised value, if, for instance, you have a VA buyer, and Tidewater is only good for VA. It's called a Tidewater initiative. So what happens is if you have a VA buyer, then and the appraiser cannot get to the purchase price. He can't find comps, okay, for the purchase price. He can initiate Tidewater. He's going to get in touch with the lender who has hired him and say, I need to initiate Tidewater. So then the buyer's agent is notified that Tidewater has been initiated. And of course, the buyer's agent usually lets the seller's agent know that Tidewater has been initiated. In other words, what Tidewater is the appraiser is saying, help me find comps for this house. So there's a 48-hour time period. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know how they count weekends and holidays. I have no idea. That's something that you have to ask when you are notified that Tidewater's been initiated. You know, it's Friday, is 48 hours until Sunday? I mean, you know, you got to question that. And they want everybody helping them find comps, okay, for the VA loan. The VA is more restrictive on their appraisals as far as comps go. They will stay real close to the letter for comps unless it's an easy adjustment. Okay, and as buyer's agents and seller's agents, we don't always make a whole lot of adjustment when it comes to our CMAs. I teach a pricing strategy advisor class for NAR, and I actually stole some of that and have my own CMA strategies class that I teach about looking at what the appraisers are looking for in these things to make adjustments. And I don't know if you've ever heard the term paired sales analysis before, but that will make your life 500 times better as a real estate agent if you're having problems with comps, is to do a paired sales analysis. But if you don't know how to do that, you got to learn how to do that. And we may have a class on that on Forum Friday, no less, because the CMA could be a forum, right? We might do that, or a business builder or something like that. But yes, the FHA doesn't have the Tidewater initiative, but the VA does. And that's what could happen here if it fails to appraise on a VA. Did I answer everybody's questions so far? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so we're going to move on. Section number 2 is the property value and condition. It plainly says that HUD doesn't warrant the value or the condition of the property, and that the buyer needs to satisfy himself or herself that the price and condition of the property are acceptable. VA doesn't want to address that at all. VA goes mostly on section 1 that we just went through the whole appraisal process. Number 3 talks about home inspections. Of course, it's important for a buyer to have a home inspection performed on the property he wishes to purchase in order to identify any possible defects. And it says, see Form RF 712, importance of inspections and property survey. So you should be using, I know this form is mentioned here for VA and FHA loans. Truth of the matter is, for self-preservation, as far as you and the real estate firm goes, all agents should be using the form RF 712 for every buyer, cash, conventional, FHA, VA, THDA, USDA. For everything you do with a buyer, you should use the form RF 712 and let them fill it out and sign it. Okay, don't you fill out and check boxes for them. Let them do it themselves. Any questions on 2 and 3? Over here and check for, nope, I don't see anything there. All right, let's talk about funding fee. I did tell you earlier that the VA loan is the only loan that has this funding fee, okay? If it's not a VA loan, and you'll hear me all the time tell you not to leave blanks blank, but if it's not a VA loan, you don't do anything with Section 4. You just move on, okay? If it is a VA loan, there's two choices. The buyer can ask the seller to pay in full at closing, and you would check the box here at line 24 and write in full at closing by the buyer or the seller, whoever it is. The buyer can pay it themselves, or you can ask the seller to pay it. But what you need to know about it is a veteran can use their certificate of eligibility, okay, their VA money, multiple times to a certain dollar point, okay? But the best thing to do, and most veterans will want to do this, is they'll use their eligibility, and then let's say they buy a house. When they sell that house, they'll pay that eligibility off so that they have the full amount of eligibility to use to buy their second house or their third house or their fourth house, okay? So the very first time a veteran uses their eligibility and they're buying a house using their VA loan, the funding fee is about 2.14765, some crazy little number, but a little over 2% of the purchase price. Okay, so you would take the purchase price and get the lender to tell you how much the funding fee is going to be, and that's what somebody would need to pay. Now, if they've used their eligibility before, like I said, they bought a house, they sold it, they paid off the certificate, and now they're using it again for the second, and any time after that they use their eligibility, it's a little over 3%. Okay, so that is something that you need to ask the VA buyer, what do you want to do about this funding fee? Now, if they're already asking the seller to pay their expenses in the contract, I could probably bet the seller is not going to want to come along and pay over 2% or over 3% in a funding fee. Okay, I'm going to tell you, in all my years of selling real estate, I've only ever had one seller pay it, and I'm going to tell you what it was. It was my son. He bought a for sale by owner in Clarksville. And they were a for sale by owner because one of the seller's sisters was a real estate agent in some other state, and she was going to coach them through. Okay, well, that doesn't bother me. And so I checked the box and said the seller were paying full at closing. Well, the sister who was a real estate agent didn't catch that. Now the sellers had plenty of money to do it at closing, but they were like, well, that was a slick move. Well, we didn't hide anything. I mean, we checked the box and we wrote it there. Somebody should have negotiated that, because we negotiated price and other things, but nobody negotiated that. And so that's the only time I've ever used it successfully, that the seller would pay that. Should you not ask the seller? Well, why not? Maybe not in this market, but if we ever get back to a stable or normal market, or if we even move into a buyer's market, it might be okay to check this box and ask the seller to pay this funding fee on top of other things. But I want to say 99.9% of the time, this box is checked at B, and they just add it to the loan amount and finance it, the funding fee. Okay. The Section 5, new construction home warranty. If the improvements on the property are less than 1 year old at the time of closing, seller shall, if required by VA or FHA, provide a home warranty certificate acceptable to VA or FHA. Okay, so if there is a contractor in the state of Tennessee, if this builder seller does not offer a written 1-year warranty, they actually have about 4 years of responsibility to the buyer. Okay, so it really behooves the seller to have some type of 1-year written home warranty certificate that everybody signs. It could be just a list of stuff that the seller will be responsible for this time frame. Okay, or 210 actually sells a new construction home warranty, so a seller may want to utilize that. So if you have a seller and it's a builder and it is new construction, you need to talk to them about this home warranty that is there. And the fact that they actually have a longer liability or responsibility to the buyer if they don't provide this written 1-year warranty. So most builders would provide their own 1-year warranty. So public water, public sewer systems, this is now part of the purchase and sale agreement, section 6. Let me see here. Back up here. I want to show you this because this is extremely important. Well, because I don't mind that they stuck it in the purchase and sale. I just wish they had done it the way they were supposed to do it, I guess I should say, or the way they needed to do it, with the lines and all. The way I'm trying to make this bigger. Okay, you guys can see it. So this is section 6, and it goes with section 6 over here. So both FHA and VA loan programs have a requirement that the properties that are sold under FHA and VA loans are connected to public water and public sewer system if they're available at the road. Now, there is a caveat. If it is what they call cost prohibitive to anybody, buyer or seller, and I'm going to be honest with you, the lender is the only one that can decide if it's cost prohibitive. Okay. And I will tell you, I have had that happen when I sell property, rural property, because a lot of people will, have a driveway that's a half a mile back to their house or whatever. Those are almost all the time cost prohibitive because they have a well and a septic system and stuff like that. Even if public water is at the road, they don't normally make them connect if it is determined to be cost prohibitive. I can't tell you how they calculate that. I don't know. It is up to the lender. So if you're selling a rural property that has a well, but the owner may say, but there's water at the road if they want to connect to it, then you need to say to him, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if we offer VA or FHA financing, then there could be the chance that somebody's going to have to pay for that to be connected to public water. Okay. Now, out in the country, most of the time, public sewer is not there. You don't have to worry about that in most of the rural places, but public water could be. So you're going to have to talk about that, and you're going to have to let them know that. And when you get over here to this purchase and sale agreement, you're going to have to negotiate that within 5 days after you find this out, that if it has to connect, it really has to connect. Now, the issue with public sewer is public water is easy, okay? Everybody knows if there's public water available to them. Not everybody knows if there's public sewer available to them. Because in the state of Tennessee, anytime a parcel of property is annexed into the city, they immediately start paying for the services that come by being in the city limits. And one of them is public sewer. But they may not be connected to public sewer. And so they're going to have to actually get in touch with the utility company and have them determine or certify that they're on public sewer. So we've got to know, because we have to annotate that in the MLS, right? So we have to know what box to check. And if the seller says, yeah, I'm on public sewer, then you've got to ask that seller to certify that. And every time they'll go get their electric bill or their utility bill from the water company, especially down here in Chattanooga, that's what we have, is the utility bill from the water company, and they're paying for public sewer. And unfortunately, we, the real estate licensees, have to say to them, but do you know that you're connected for sure? Because we have found down here in Chattanooga, especially, people think they are and they're not. Okay. There are people that are connected but still have a septic tank. There's a lot of stuff. Okay. So you need to get that certification from the utility company if they say they're on a public sewer. In my mind, when you list a property and they say it's on public sewer, go ahead and get them to certify that. Get that letter from the utility company and upload it in the MLS so everybody has what they need to have. Okay. That's being proactive. If you're not proactive and it comes up here once you're in the purchase and sale agreement, then you have to negotiate it, and you have to negotiate who's going to pay for it and the whole 9 yards, which means, we're not plumbers, and we're definitely not utility company employees, but we have to have an idea of what it would cost to connect something to public water or public sewer. Okay. And one of the things that is kind of public knowledge is, what does the utility company charge to set the meter, whether it be a water meter or a sewer, or, what do they charge? They're going to set that meter. Okay. Because there's a charge for that. So we can know that and we can communicate that to folks. There's that charge, and then there's the connection fee to connect it to the house. That's usually done by a plumber. And then there's all these inspections, and there could be fees to those inspections. So you need to kind of get an idea of what it costs beforehand. Okay. But now they've got it in the purchase and sale agreement, and it just says over here that you should see that section. So if you're an FHA or VA, you have an FHA or VA buyer, you need to understand you may have to deal with this. You may have to deal with it. So you've got to know how to deal with it. Okay. And that is, you need everything certified from the utility company, water and sewer. Okay. So if it's a rural property and they got a well, but they say something like there's water at the road, you got to try to figure out early on what it's going to cost to connect, because they're going to want it connected if they're doing a VA or FHA loan. Any questions on that? Y'all are awful quiet. Okay. Section 7 also relates you back to the purchase and sale agreement at lines 289 through 290 in the inspections paragraph. VA buyers, the termite letter, which I mentioned earlier, is considered one of those non-allowable expenses. So the buyer needs to go ahead and get it inspected. They just can't pay for it. It's going to have to be billed to the seller. Okay. Don't sit back and say, well, that's a VA thing, and not get it done during the inspection time frame, because it's still the buyer's obligation to have the inspection done. They just can't pay for it. It's going to have to be charged to the seller on the closing disclosure, and a lot of times. And sometimes the termite companies, the pest people, they don't want to do that. So the seller may need to pay them up front. And if that's the case, then the two agents are going to have to talk and say, well, this is what's going on. They don't want to wait until closing in case it don't close to get paid. They want it paid for up front. Now, all the other obligations about the report, repairs, and treatments, they are as it is agreed in the purchase and sale agreement. Because if it comes back and it needs some kind of treatment, or if there's some repairs needed, that's all part of the inspection process. But the actual going out and doing the report, the buyer can't pay for that. That's a non-allowable. Any questions? Let me see here. Nope, nothing in chat. Great. So let's just go on down to Section 8, which just confuses the hound dog out of most real estate agents, and I'm really not sure why. Well, I do know, because they're not familiar enough with the closing process and what a non-allowable is. And I think that really happened when we stopped using the HUD-1. I mean, we used to actually, in our office, in my old W.S. Wellens Realty in Spring Lake, North Carolina, we used to fill out the HUD. And that just is crazy. So we had to know what all this stuff is. But nowadays, the title companies and stuff are doing all that. So nobody has to know. And I think that's why people don't know, just because things have changed. But what paragraph 8 says, if there are non-allowables that are not chargeable to the buyer, that's what it says right here, pursuant to governmental guideline, seller agrees to pay at closing, and then it's got the definition of closing. Such non-allowable settlement charges or closing costs on behalf of buyer at a sum not to exceed something. Now, this year, they added this statement afterwards, shall be deemed to be zero if left blank. Okay, and they added that because we've had so many problems with this, specifically for VA buyers. Okay, in Cleveland, we had a local Cleveland bank come and tell us a few years ago that we needed to train our agents how to fill this form out because the bank was having to eat too many costs because it wasn't filled out properly. So the blank at line number 40 is only for the total amount of non-allowable settlement charges. It is not for the total amount of expenses you're asking the seller to pay for the buyer. You read, and this sentence, this last sentence of this section, has been here since this form came out. Such sum shall be a part of the amount, if any, which seller has agreed to pay on behalf of buyer in the purchase and sale agreement or prior addenda. So I'm going to go over here to the purchase and sale agreement, and I'm going to go up here to the expenses paragraph, okay, right here. And if in this purchase and sale agreement, you have asked the seller to pay expenses, any of these buyer expenses or any of these title expenses, let's say you said not to exceed $6,500, like the example language shows. The seller would not be paying more than $6,500 if the buyer was an FHA or VA buyer, because whatever the non-allowables are part of the amount you've already asked them to pay over here. Okay? That's why you need to speak to the lenders you use, and you need to ask them a specific question. If I have a buyer that is giving an FHA loan, how much are the non-allowables from your lending institution that a buyer would have to pay? And then the same question. If I have a VA buyer, how much are the non-allowables will a buyer not be able to pay? Okay, just how much are the non-allowables? That's the question. Not how much are the closing costs. How much are the non-allowables? That's the question. Okay.
Susan, is there a list somewhere of non-allowables?
There are several lists on several different websites. And I'm going to tell you, there could be some caveats to these non-allowables. Okay. There could be, there's some, let's say, are they paying a origination fee? If they're paying an origination fee, some lenders have rolled the non-allowables into the origination fee. So they'll tell you there's no non-allowables because they've rolled it in. So it depends on the lender. So the list really doesn't do you a whole lot of good, because each place you go look, I mean, I guess you could read the entire programs. I mean, I don't know. I guess you could find out if you read the entire program for VA or FHA, but I mean, that's probably hundreds of pages of information, and you would have to pick out the non-allowables through there also. And who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. It's just easier to call 2 or 3 lenders and say, if I have a VA buyer or an FHA buyer, what does your institution charge for non-allowables? And you may get, well, it depends. I mean, that might be the answer. So you might, I mean, it's almost like you have to do this with every buyer that you get. You have to call their lender and say, what are the non-allowables going to be? And if, let's say you've got a lender that says, well, if you're working with me and you can calculate 4% of the purchase price to be the closing costs and prepays, because that's what they're going to call it every time, the question would be, well, does that include any non-allowables for FHA and VA buyers? And I'm going to be honest, it probably does. It probably does. So, but you need to put a number here. So if I'm going to tell you and teach you about this form, if it's an FHA buyer, I'd put $125 in that blank. If it's a VA buyer, I would put probably $600, but I would talk to the lender because the VA can be from 600 to 14 or $1,500 depending on if they're paying an origination fee or not. With an FHA buyer, it's easy. It's probably never going to be $125. I think it might be 20. I don't know for sure, but it just seems to be gone on FHAs. But VAs is where it's not gone. That's not the kind of answer you guys want, right? You want the warm and fuzzy answer, tell me what to put in the blank and move on kind of thing. And you could do that. Let's say we are asking the seller to pay $6,500. I literally asked the lender, does that include non-allowables? Yes. I don't even ask them for amount. I put, somewhere between $600 and $1,400 right here because whatever I put here is the amount is included in the amount I'm already asking them to pay. So it really don't matter. I know that's really confusing, isn't it? Sorry. I wish it was I wish they could give us a list for everything. And all I had to do was refer to that list, just like appraisers, I wish they would tell me, what percentage are you going to give a value are you going to give to a basement or to a garage or to, an extra bedroom anything over 3, an extra bath, anything over 2. Well, then what about an extra bath if it's only 1 bath and they add a second bath? See, that value is higher. If it's only a 1 bath and they add and make it a 2 bath, the value is higher than if it's a 2 bath and they make it a 3 bath. Now tell me how that makes sense, but it could be higher. So that's why they always say it depends on everything. I'm just trying to check that chat there. And then again, refers it back to the purchase and sale agreement. If it conflicts with the terms of the purchase and sale agreement, then the addendum controls. You got to understand that. Of course, the purchase and sale agreement remains in full force and effect, but whatever you've put in this addendum controls. Okay, so we've got to make sure we do everything right. And then this is the part that you really need to be aware of. It says this is the purchase and sale agreement certification. We hereby certify that the terms of the or this sales contract are true and to the best of our knowledge and belief, that there are no side agreements not disclosed within or by an attached addendum between the buyer, the seller, or the real estate broker. Parties agree that the real estate broker's signature on this document is for certification purposes only as required and does not make either said real estate broker a party to the purchase and sale agreement. And so you are certifying when you sign it that there are no side agreements. So what kind of side agreements am I talking about? Let's say that, let's say they're going to fill out a bill of sale, and for $1, there's $60,000 worth of furniture attached. That's really included in the sales price because they're only paying $1 for it on a sale. That could be a problem. Okay, that could be a problem. It could be a problem if somebody says, well, don't worry about it. After we close, I'll pay you back X dollars. That could come from a real estate agent as far as commission goes or giving some kind of rebate or something like that. That's a huge problem. So that's what it's talking about. There can't be any side agreements that the lender doesn't know about. And then everybody signs it and dates it, and we're good to go. So questions? FHA, VA addendum. So I'm going to stop sharing to see if maybe now I can see everybody's face, and I don't know if I can or not. I can, great, all right. So, well, I can see the people who actually have their face on there. So I know what everybody looks like except Jim Swafford. So I'm not sure, I don't think I've ever met Jim, so maybe one of these days we'll get to meet. But does anybody have any questions about the VA FHA addendum? Or any other form question that I could answer you? We got 8 or 9 minutes left.
Of course, there'll be more questions when we face this personally and have one dealing going.
Yeah, I expect that. It don't matter. You could go to training and go to training and go to training, but until you actually do it, it's sitting there in your head, but then you second guess yourself about what you should be doing. And I'm going to be honest with you, I do that all the time. even though I teach with the forms, when I fill out an offer for somebody, I'm a nervous wreck because I know they say, oh, she teaches forms. We better make sure we're doing this right. Well, I'm a nervous wreck because you're saying that, and I want to make sure I do it right. And we all want to do things right. I don't think anybody wants to go, well, let me just see how much I can lie and do things wrong when I fill out this purchase and sale. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we all do the best we can as we're working through. So if you guys don't have anything else, then we'll be finished with this Friday's Forum Friday, and we'll be moving on to the next one next week.
Thank you, Miss Susan. You're awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for being here, and let me know if you have any questions after the fact. And those teaching forms are uploaded in SCM Tools. If you log in to your MyWiker and you can go to the company cloud, there's a bunch of stuff in there. So go in there and take a look and see what's in there. And again, if you have any questions, all your brokers are ready to talk to you. All right, guys, have a good weekend. I'll see you later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello. Yes. Yes.
Hey, Todd. Todd's got his on mute. Todd.